Welcome to the Sugar Shack. Oh yeah. Right then, get your camera. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the very first instance of when you use Lightroom Classic. And because you're going to be importing your pictures, and that's really important to understand the very first sequence. Now, if we're looking at the screen now, you can see that I've already got images in here, which doesn't help you because obviously you're going to be starting afresh probably in most cases and working with Lightroom. Or it may be you've started using Lightroom already, but you don't feel you've got about it the right way and you want to start again, but not lose all your images. So that is why I've started with my library, so that I can go over, if you've already got a library, how to create a new one, but still be able to access all your old pictures before. So basically you can have more than one library. So that's really important to remember. And if I go to File on here, I've probably got others that I've done. If I go to File and you go to Open Recent, you can see I've actually got all these different ones. So if I wanted to go back to my 2016 catalogue, I could click on there and it would open that catalogue of images. So therefore, don't think, you've only got to stick with one catalogue. And what I usually do each year, you can see these, I've got 2016, 2018. Now, this is a computer I don't use that often, mainly just for this purpose, for creating videos and whatever. So I haven't got 2019 and 2020 on there, but you can see I've got all my old catalogues on there. So I can access those libraries and get to those. So really important. So what I'm going to do now, let's just imagine that you've already got a catalogue or you're starting from the very first time. When you open Lightroom, you will have this option to create a new catalogue, and you'll have to create a catalogue if you're using it for the first time, because you need a catalogue to put your images in. So let's go to new catalogue. Okay, and it'll come up with a little box. Now I'm using an Apple Mac, and you're probably using a PC in most cases, some of you, so it won't look exactly the same, but it will be very, very similar. There's not that much difference between the two operating systems. So save as, and I will call it, let's call it 2020. I know we were at the end of that, so okay, you can call it whatever you want. I usually create a new catalogue each year. So when I'm approaching the end of the year, I'll create a new catalogue. Sometimes before, because it can free up a little bit of memory if you're not, if you haven't got that many images to go over. Although Lightroom has got much better in that. I mean, in most cases, I'm taking 60, 70,000 images a year, sometimes more. So my catalogues are pretty big for the year. And you're probably not taking as many as that, unless you've got an addiction like me, that is. So we'll just go from there. So save as 2020, that's what we're going to call the catalogue. And where, now this is where people get really confused. This is a catalogue. That does not mean that it's going to save the pictures in this location. This will basically create some files, not overly large files, but it will create like a cache where it will store little images of your pictures and whatever, very small thumbnail pictures and nothing else. So they're not going to be huge files. So don't worry too much about the storage. And what I would say is, if you've got plenty of room on your main hard drive, and it says in my case it's going to save it in pictures, which is the hard drive with my operating systems on, that's probably a good place, because things on that drive usually work a lot faster than if they're on a different drive. And if you've got it on a different drive and it isn't connected, you're not going to be able to access your folder and you'll come up with all sorts of problems. So it's nice to have it local if you've got the area to do that. So I'm just going to click on create there, and you can change where you want it, obviously, so you can click on there and say where you want to put it, but that's fine for me, and it isn't really something I need to access that often, so as long as you know where it is, don't worry about it. So I'll click on create. It says it already exists. Do I want to replace it? Well, I don't want to replace it, so I'm going to call this 2020 test. There we go. So I'm only going to be using this actually for the purpose of training. So it closes the catalogue and it will reopen it. So you can see it's opening now with the new name. But I haven't lost all those images. So I can go back and still get back to those. So you'll see that in a moment. So we've got no photos in this. This is how you would actually start. And if I go to File, if you have done ones before, and go to Open Recent, you can see that I've got my previous folder there and all the others as well. And I can click and access any of those by using Open Recent. And unless you've got thousands, it will probably be on that list, Open Recent. Stores so many. So you're not going to lose those. You're going to be able to access them straight away and swap the libraries over if you need to. Okay, so I don't need to do that because I've got my new library. So in the first instance, let's just look at the screen and see what we've got. On the left hand side, we've got different panels. Now you can see there's right on the edge there's a little triangle. If I click on that, it will take that panel away. You've got one on the right hand side as well, which does the same thing. And also you've got one at the bottom, so you look for the line, get that double arrow. Now that can be quite useful, and we'll look why after. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there for now. So when you're editing a picture, sometimes it's a good idea to get rid of these on the left hand side because you don't really need them. You'll be working more on this side, and if you just want to view your pictures, you can take them both away, drag this down and make your screen bigger or larger. So that's just a little bit about using the section. Also, you'll see you've got library. So you get different things on each one. When you start, you will probably be on library, not develop. You've got develop, map. We'll talk about those things later, but the main part, we want to be in library to start with. So if you've got those sections up there, click on library and we can begin to import some pictures. Now this is probably the most important part because this is where people get confused. If you're using the old method of getting your pictures and attaching your camera to the PC to import your pictures, I would stop at that stage and have a rethink about how you get your pictures actually on your computer. And the reason I'm saying that is it is not the best way to import your pictures straight from the camera. What I would do is get a card reader. I've actually got a card reader here. I don't know if you can see that. And I can put my card into that. And that's the best way to work. Get a card reader and take the memory out of the camera to import your images. And by using that method, it'll make it much easier and much safer. Because if anything goes wrong with your camera, if power goes off or anything like that, you've got to make sure it's fully charged and all those other things where things could go wrong. It's much easier to take the card out and work that way. So it's a good idea at this stage, if you're still doing that and you're using the camera, get yourself a card reader. You've probably already got one. I mean, if you use SD memory and you haven't got any other type of memory, if that's the type of memory that you use for your camera, which the majority are, not all of them, but the majority, you can then usually find that you've got one already on your PC or your laptop or whatever you're using. So there's usually an SD card slot on your machine and you can simply use that. So therefore you don't need to buy anything, it's probably already there. So have a look on your PC, see if you've got one. Okay, so having said that, it may be that you've already got lots of images on your computer that you want to put into this library, or you still get your card and you copy the pictures and put them into a folder on your PC. Now, I'm not saying that's the wrong way. Some people prefer that method, and there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. But the way you would import your pictures then would be different from importing it from a card. But what I'm going to do first of all is to show you how to import it from an actual card. So I'm going to put the card into the card reader. And when I do that, hopefully, fingers crossed, there we go, automatically it will open it and I will access the pictures. Now, on occasions, it doesn't do that. But what will happen from the left hand side when you're in the library view, you will see all these different locations. So if it doesn't do that, you will see the card, and in my case it's called EOS Digital, and you can see I've got a folder there. Now, on occasions it may select the card, but it's not showing you any images whatsoever. So you've got to be careful on that, because if it does that, what it will usually come up is with some text on the import button there when you click on it to say show subfolders, and that's really important. So if it does say that, make sure you include the subfolders within that selection, and then it will look through all the folders that are actually on that drive to find the images. So that can happen quite often. So it's something to need to know. Okay, in my case it hasn't. So what it does is it's open that, and this is what you will get in any circumstance once you've done that. And you can see I can now slide this down and I can view all of my images. So they are all selected. You can see that you've got ticks on each picture, and if you've got a tick there, you can import those images. So let's just say there's some I didn't want to include. What do you do then? Okay, so let's say I didn't want to include any of these first ones. I want to start from these waterfall images. Well, what I can do is I can click on the first one, and let's just say it was that one picture. I can take the tick off and that will deselect it, or I can hold down the shift key on the keyboard and making sure I've clicked on the first one, I can go to this one and click, and by holding down the shift key that will select all the images up to that point. And if I take one of the ticks out, any of the boxes, it will take the tick out of all of them. So if you've got images and you want to review them, first of all, by doing that, do that first to select what you want. The next important thing is to look at the top and make sure you've got the word copy. So you've got various choices. You've got copy, move and add. Now if you're using a card, make sure it's not on move, because that will just take them off the card and move them onto the PC. And if you do that and anything goes wrong, it could end up you lose all your images. So basically I never hardly ever use move. In fact, I don't think I've ever used move. I either copy or I add. Now if you was to add them, it would keep them on the card and put them into the library, but it wouldn't physically put the pictures on your PC. So when you are using a card, in nearly every circumstance you're going to have copy. So you need to make sure that's selected. If you don't and you add them, you'll still see the pictures in your library, but when you take your card out and you delete all your pictures, you won't then be able to access the pictures by clicking on the little pictures that are in your library. They will still remain there. It creates a little copy, a little image of your pictures, so when you click on it, it then loads up the real image as such. So really important that make sure you're on copy. Next thing is we look over to the right hand side, and this has got a little arrow there, and it's telling me where it's going to put it. So it's putting it on high. It's like, well, I actually don't want it there. I want it somewhere else. I want it on one of my folders, one of my different hard drives on my PC. So if I click on that, I can say other destination. Now, if that was the location where you wanted it, fine. You haven't got to do anything else. It will put a folder in and store all your images. But I'm going to other destination. So now I've done that, I can select a location where I want it to go. So I can look at my different disks, and let's say I've got an 8 terabyte disk there. So let's say I want to put it in there. So I can choose that. And what it will do, it won't just chuck them in that, it will create a folder with the name of our library to put the pictures in. So don't think they're just going to be chucked on there. It will put them in a folder automatically. So I choose that. So it's now going to that disk. If I scroll down there, you will see it's highlighted. So that's great. I'm making sure it's going to the right place. So let's just stop and analyse what we've done there. I've just killed my microphone. Bear with me. Okay, so we'll just analyse what we've done. We've selected the location. That's really important. So that part there, always check that to make sure it's going to where you want the actual files to go. And I would pick a place where, in every instance in this catalogue, that's where they're going to go. Then you haven't got to change that. And automatically it will create folders. You can see these older folders there. It will create something like this. You'll get a folder. These are on the wrong disk because we haven't started yet. But you can see in pictures it's created a folder called 2016, and inside there it will have a list of all the different locations. Or this one 2017, you will see we've got all these locations in there. So by date it creates a folder and it puts them in there. But we're on this one now, and we haven't got anything in there. So if I now click on import, all these pictures will be copied. It will leave them on the card, but it will copy them and it will now put them into this folder. Now if you think this is complex, it's not too bad after the first time, because once you've done it the first time, it will then look, all you've got to check is it's going into the right place, and you just have to click on import. It will automatically then keep putting it in that folder unless you change it. So I'm now going to click on import. And the important thing is as well, it's keeping them on the card. So if anything goes wrong, I haven't lost all those images. They're still on the card. So I've got another chance of doing whatever I want to do with that. And if I'm then happy, okay, I've imported all the pictures correctly, then you can delete them on your camera, and once you know you've safely got the images onto your PC. So really basic stuff, but probably the most important part, because I've seen so many people, you know, click on, rather than copy, they've clicked on add and they've added the pictures, took the card out, wiped the card clean, and then they've lost all the images because they're not on the PC. Although they can see them on the screen, they're not physically on the PC. It's there so that if you put the card back in, it would then see them and locate them. So that's when things start getting all mixed up and goes horribly wrong. So that first instance is the most important one, the one you need to make sure you get correct. Okay, once we've got that, you can see now it's importing all those photos. Now we have got quite a lot selected, and you can see them being imported down there. So as I scroll down, you'll see it's dragging them all in, and there's still photos to come. So it says 157 images is going up there, 213 photos. And we're nearly there, so still coming in. And you can see as they come in, we can drag down. Now these are quite large files, so it's, you know, it can take a little while to import all your images, especially when you've got as many as I usually have. But what's making it slower in my case is I've also got a video on here. Now videos, this is the video, Videos take a lot longer. So you can see that's whirring around there. It's still importing that, or it's doing a preview of it. Okay, once it's all gone, you'll notice that bar is now gone. So we now know that we have imported all of the images. Now in most cases, once it's done that, automatically it will disconnect the card. So if you've got the card reader, it will then say, okay, I've finished doing what I want to do, and Lightroom will then actually make the card go off your USB. It'll unload it as such. It'll eject the card. And that's nice because you then can't take your card out and cause any damage to the images that are already on there. But it's always a good idea to check first. So just check that it has actually do that. Go to USB connections and just check that that card's disconnected. But I know it has, so I can take it out. It's all downloaded. I'm all there. So now we have the beginnings of our catalogue. We've got our images imported, and that's how you would do that, by inserting a card and letting Lightroom store it in the location for you. That is the method I use. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. If you like to get your images first of all and put them on the PC or the iMac or whatever you use, there's nothing wrong with that. You use your system. But what I will say is, if you do use this system and you learn this method, it makes things so much easier, because all your files are then easily located using Lightroom, and you haven't got to go and import pictures. And even if you've done that in the past, why not use this method now from the future? Create a new catalogue. If you've got an old catalogue and you've added pictures before, which will be the next stage that I'll talk about, but if you've got a little bit of knowledge and you've added pictures that are already on your PC, when we start for 2021 or whatever year you're working on, why not create a new catalogue for that year and try this method and see if it suits you? And I think you'll find that it's much easier, takes out a lot of the hard work and whatever. So that is the first video, because I don't want to include too much in the videos. We're going to go over things quite deeply in all the videos to come. And the next video I'm going to do is how to import photos that are already on your PC. So for those people that do use the method of creating folders and putting the images on there, how do you then use Lightroom to get those pictures into your catalogue? Okay, so end of one. Look for the next one.